Once you shut your mind down to the possibility that it can be achieved, there's no way it can happen. If you're in a fight, you have to attack. You have to keep attacking. The enemy has to know he is not going to give up. You must break the soul of whatever the is in front of you. That's what I realized. I was never breaking the soul of anything in front of me. So that's why I came up with this thing called Taking Souls in my book. I started to devise ways to break a soul of a human being, of an object, of whatever's in front of me. If you keep on attacking something, nothing wants to stand in front of anything that is relentless. Nothing. I started watching those instructors on the side, because there's 3 shifts. There's 8 instructors, 3 shifts. Because the guys going through Hell Week, they're up all day and all night for 130 hours. This is the promised land of mental hardening for me. I love this place. And you have the instructors who they've been there, done that. Now they're instructing you. So they do their 8-hour shift and they're beating the crap out of us. And when I started realizing, I started playing mind games. And I was like, you know what? I bet these are looking at us, judging themselves about when they were going through Hell Week. About, let me see, I'm looking at Goggins right now. I was better than him. I was better than that guy. I was better than that over there. And I was like, okay. You gotta judge me, right? All right. Today is Wednesday and everybody's broken. Everybody's beat up, man. And like this is when you start moving like a robot. Everybody's like just trying to get through Hell Week now, and your energy's zapped. And they know Wednesday's like that over the hump.
I love that you talked about that in the book too, that they put it in your head that Wednesday you're gonna be tired.
Oh yeah. And that's another thing. They tell you how you're supposed to feel. So you are feeling that way. I was like, don't let these motherfuckers tell you how you're supposed to feel. No, it's day 1, motherfucker. This is hour 1. So I was getting my boat crew all jacked up. I said, we're going to take these motherfuckers' souls. And I looked on the instructors' faces and it looked like someone had just with their soul. And I looked at my guys in my boat crew and I said, hey, guess what? Those aren't tonight. We own space in their head. We own space. They're going to think about us tonight. And we start fueling off of that. It takes 1 second of energy to steal everybody's. And then you have all the energy you need. That's all you need. You need to look at someone's eyes. You know how it is when you fight somebody and you broke that motherfucker. He's like, oh God, man, I don't want to go back to the next round. And you feel like, my God, I can fight all day. I can fight all day long. That's what taking souls is. But you have to have the will, the heart, the courage to go that distance when you're exactly jacked up. You have nothing left to give and give more.
That is an interesting thing about the mind, is that you can find inspiration, and when you find inspiration, when you get charged up, all of a sudden you have energy.
That's right.
It's weird.
And I talk about in the book also is about, I learned how to control my adrenals. If you know how you get that fight or flight response when you get to move real quick.
Yeah.
And I started learning the mind a lot, how to get myself jacked extremely fast. Like in a horrible environment when everybody's miserable. I learned how to really find strength in the misery. When everybody's suffering, everybody's all poopy pants and their mentality's down and everything. I started just like, my God, this is where I shine. And I started using all that misery for tons and tons of drive and motivation to then lead people further. Because you can get a lot of power through misery. And once people see that, my God, Goggins is going, then everybody says, roger that. Let me get my shit and go too. So I started realizing that if you can just find strength just a little bit longer, you will have a crew of people following you along the way.
And that is another thing that no one can ever teach you. You're going to have to learn that on your own. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to figure out how to pull that energy out of your mind on your own. There's no book you can read. No, it's a grind that you have to start and finish on your own.
You have to take great pleasure in the fact that no one wants to be where the you're at right now. Great pleasure in that. It must makes, it has to bring a passion out of you. It has to bring something very, very weird out of you, man. Like, people don't really understand what that is. When you're in the worst environment possible, the worst situation possible, and everybody's looking like, God, man, I hope this ends. And you see that. Time slows down and you see that. You're feeling that. Everybody has that look on their face like, God, this got to go. I don't want to be here anymore. I fell on my ass. I thought I got to the top of Mount Everest, and Mount Everest just slide right underneath me, man. I was like, God, dog, I got to start from scratch again. Scratch became my friend, literally, man. So You know, that's how we put in the book, man. Just going up, going down, going up. Just the real raw version of how my life was. It was so in depth to go back through your life with a fine tooth comb that I almost got embarrassed to even put it out there to people.
Yeah.
That's what you don't understand, man. Like, even me right now to talk to you, I'm in the car for a fucking hour getting pumped up because I'm a shy, introverted, leave me alone type of guy. Like, I'm still that fucker who is 6 years old, you know, at a play who can't say his line because I know I'm going to stutter in front of 5 people. So I walk off the stage. That's still me. So every day I'm fighting that dude. So people think, oh my God, man, you're on a podcast, you look so crazy, so evil. No, I'm trying to be locked into Joe. So my mind isn't veer off saying, let's run out the damn door because people are watching me on the fucking podcast. I want to open this damn door and get the hell out of here, man. So that's the real me. So I'm not sadistic, man. I'm focused on what I have to do to stay locked into the game of life. And that's what I tell people, man, I go there. I go there.
That's one of the reasons why this book is so good, is because you're so honest about your vulnerabilities and how you overcome them. And for people that see someone who's a beast, who's done great things, you just assume that they're different than you.
Right.
But then you hear about your insecurities and your pitfalls and all the things that went wrong with you, and you realize, well, God damn it, those are the same things that go wrong with me. Like, maybe I have that inside of me and I've just never summoned it.
Right. And I'll tell you this, I started really realizing that when I started overcoming myself, I started getting around these real alpha males, these hard men. And I always put people way above me when I was growing up. Like, my God, they had to have a lot more than me to get to where they're at. And a lot of them did. But once you get around the best of the best of the best people, you can kind of start breaking them down and realizing, man, you're just as fucked up as me. Like we all have, but all you did was you hit it better. Your upbringing, your mom and dad, your society, the way you were raised, it hit it better than mine. You weren't the only black kid, or there was like 5 in a school. You know, I can't hide. Going through buds, I was the only black kid. You can't hide. But I started realizing, just because I look different than you, a lot of you motherfuckers can't hide either. So it started giving me courage through watching people that we all have a story. We all have a jacked up life in one way or another. Some of us don't have the guts to talk about it, though. And that's where I found the guts to talk about mine.
Well, there's purity in physical pursuits, right? Because it doesn't matter what your social status is. It doesn't matter how people perceive you. When it comes down to how long can you stay in that pool, when it comes down to how far can you run, right, when it comes down to how much can you push yourself past the part where you want to quit, right, how far can you keep going? There's a purity in that it dissolves social order, all that. What people think about you goes out the window. It's who are you right now?
That's right.
Who are you right now?
That's a true statement, man. And I look at it as psychological warfare. And that's where I started learning that life is one big psychological warfare that you play on yourself. You play on yourself, man. The most important conversation I ever had is with myself. And the shit I was telling myself was so f***ed up. It was so wrong. It was so misguided. And other people start to write that dialogue for you also. And it starts to be what you say to yourself every single day. And I started creating a whole nother warfare, a whole nother battle started becoming. I was like, oh, hang on a second, Goggins. You have these tools. You have these tools. Your life was basically the perfect grounds for training for where you need to go in your life. All the beatings, all the bullying, all the, you going through learning disabilities, all the struggles. It was the absolute perfect training ground for you to go to where you need to go. And that's how I started looking at my life versus woe is me, poopy pants, kick a rock down the street mentality. It was, God just hooked you right the fuck up. He hooked you right up, man, with the perfect place. You were training for the first 18, 19, 20, you were training for this stuff, man. You have the advantage of everybody else versus, my God, they're so above me. They came from a great family. Mom and dad love them. They didn't have to learn, they didn't stutter, they didn't struggle. No, man, your struggle is what made you who you are now. So I started flipping this into a whole different, I started being a master of what I was scared of. I was scared of my mind. And I became literally a master of that mind. And that's what from now on, it sets me apart from most people. I started diving into that.
Well, that is a big part of the stories when you go over your childhood and, your abusive father, and then having this great guy that was going to become your stepdad, and then he gets murdered. It's like right when you're about to get out of it, everything looks good, boom, and then he gets murdered. It's like these things really did sort of set you up to start from scratch again and just go, okay, roger that, we start from scratch. And now you have that attitude. You developed it through all of these horrible personal experiences, all the trials and tribulations, all the evil shit that people try to do to you. That sort of set you up to be able to deal in a way that a lot of people can't.
You know what? I grew up not that guy.
Yeah.
So a lot of people put a title on me. They want to, they see me now. They see me now as the guy that with his shirt off, who can do 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours, who can run 205 miles in 39 hours, who can do all this crazy shit. But what they don't understand is they don't understand the journey that it took me to get to this point. And what got me to this point was I was just the opposite of what I am today. I was that guy who ran away from absolutely everything that I got in front of me. But not many people knew that. I had two people. I had the real me was like this very scared, insecure, stuttering, got beat up by his dad, all this kind of stuff. And then I built this fake person that walked around like my shit didn't stink,
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I did it. And through a process of time, I realized that I was lying to myself and lying to people.
But it's a fascinating journey, though, because you are that guy now.
Right.
I mean, you genuinely are legit bad.
Right.
And at one point in time, you were a legit terrified person.
Yes.
So what was the process? Like, how did you step forth?
Well, it's a long process.
Right.
My dad beat the shit out of me when I was growing up. I was the first black baby born in this hospital called Miller Fillmore in Buffalo, New York. My dad owned skating rinks. He owned bars. He ran prostitutes from Canada to Buffalo, New York. My dad was a big-time pimp, big-time. Anything bad about a person, big-time hustler. He was American. You know that movie with Denzel Washington? Mm-hmm. He was that, but not that bad.
Right.
He wasn't that big, but that's what it reminds me of. He was that kind of guy. And beat the shit out of me, the shit out of my mom. There was an incident one time when my mom got knocked out on top of the stairs, and he dragged her down the stairs by her hair. And at 6 years old, I'll never forget this. In my mind, I was always afraid. My whole life I was afraid, but I had this fucking voice, this conscience that would always be battling me, saying, hey, you got to get up and do something. I didn't want to do shit. I was just afraid, but that voice would force me to get up. And my dad, I tried to beat him up, whatever, at 6, and I get my ass kicked. So this went on for several years. And I have a big time learning disability because my dad didn't believe in us going to school. So my dad, it was about the business, the skating rink and the bar. So the skating rink opened about 7 o'clock at night. And this is the time I was able to walk. So about 4, 5, 6 years old, 8, 9. And I go to this, skating rink at 7 o'clock at night. And I worked the skating rink until 10 at night. And then we would scrape the gum off the floors and we cleaned the whole skating rink up. And then my dad had an office. And my brother and myself would sleep in the office. And my mom would go upstairs and work the bar until 3 o'clock in the morning. And then they cleaned the bar up. So after all that shit was done with, going to school rarely happened. So when I went to school, I was all kind of, my learning disability. I had social anxiety. I was just a jacked up kid from living in this tortured home. From the outside looking in, we lived in an all-white neighborhood, and then we would travel to the ghetto of Buffalo, New York, where the skating rink was at. So we worked around mostly blacks, and I lived around mostly whites, but no one knew what was going on in that house on 201 Paradise Road. It's crazy. But my mom got courage to finally leave him. When I was about 8 years old, we moved to a small town in Brazil, Indiana, and that's when the real war started for me. And Brazil, Indiana is a small town. Great people, a lot of great people. And I say that because a lot of people get offended. And I'm going to get to the point why they get offended. There was about maybe 10 black families at about 10,000 people in the town. And in 1995, the KKK marched in the 4th of July parade. So this was not everybody was racist. There was a lot of good people. Some of the best people I knew was there, but there was also a lot of racism there. So me being one of the few black kids in that, in that area, it kind of haunts you. I had stuff on my notebook, we're going to kill you. On my Spanish notebook, they had that on my car, we're going to kill you. This is early 90s. And so even though I showed it didn't hurt me, it was jacking me up. So all the insecurities I had when I was a kid with my father, I moved into this area here, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And the shit haunted me. And that voice that I talked about, it kept talking louder and louder and louder, but I was doing nothing about it. And I decided to make moves. And I cheated all through school. And it's kind of humbling to talk about my stories sometimes, and it's also embarrassing, but it's real. It's who the fuck I am. It's what I am. It's what created me. And copied from the 4th grade to my junior year in high school on every assignment. And I wanted to get in the military, wanted to join the Air Force, and the guy gave me an ASVAB test. It's like a watered down SAT. And I couldn't copy on it because the guy beside me had a test A, I had test B. The guy on my right had test C. So I looked to copy on this test and I couldn't copy on it, so I got like a 20. And I wanted to be an Air Force pararescueman. It's guys that jump out of airplanes and save down pilots. It's a special operator in the Air Force. And my score was so horribly low that I'd retake it again. And he said, hey, I got like an 18 the second time, even worse. I need to get a 50 out of a 99. And so my mom and I, for a while, we lived in the government subsidized apartments, $7 a month, and also food stamps. And we slowly moved up to a $230 a month place. But at the time, we were pretty poor. But my mom afforded enough money for me to go to see a tutor one hour a week. So for 4 hours a month, and I had 6 months to study for my last test. I could only take the ASVAB test 3 times. And I studied my ass off and passed it. And I got in the Air Force and realized there was more things in front of me. I was afraid of the water, terrified of the water. And I learned how to swim, but what gets everybody in this training, in all special ops training, is the water confidence, where they try to pretty much drown your ass. All of our lives we've been breathing, and they take that from you, and they want to see how comfortable you are in the water. And there's only 1% African Americans in special operations. And I didn't know anything about African, like a lot of them are negative buoyant, which I am, because of the bone density. I struggled. But 6 weeks into the program, there was about 25 guys left out of about 150. I was there, and I didn't go to sleep for 6 weeks of the program. And I wanted to quit so badly, but I quit everything in my life. I copied through school. I wanted to prove people wrong. And so here I am in this Air Force program, starting to get a little more confidence, but this water was kicking my ass. And 6 weeks into the program, the doctor gave me a blood test. And I have sickle cell trait, not the anemia, but it still killed people. But so they pulled me out of training for a week. And when you go from being very uncomfortable in that water situation, and then now you're comfortable, and I'm sitting back watching the guys drown, I'm not part of the activities anymore for this week. I didn't want to get back in that damn water again. So the fear overcame me, and all my insecurities from my dad, from this small town, from everything started coming back. And even though no one knew how fucked up I was, kind of created this other person who was tough, I lived with this shit all the time.